Ladies, gentlemen, Mandalorians out there, welcome to my Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 7, titled The Spies. And we'll get into that title a little bit later because, yeah, I have a few things to say about it. A character or two felt a little bit off to me, but things are finally ramping up. Things are finally getting a bit crazier. You know, I've seen lots of comments of people saying, you know, maybe this should have happened a little bit sooner. We'll get into like more of my like overall review / breakdown towards the end, but I do want to nerd out about, you know, going over the episode, recapping the details, because certainly things stepped it up as we thought. Like, you know, this is the last 2 episodes, so I'm dying to hear what you guys have to say down in the comments below. Let me know what you think about my theories, my thoughts, and everything like that. But let's get right into this. Also, actually, like the video. That really does help me out a bunch. So we pick up with a very nice looking Coruscant opening. It was kind of very Blade Runner with Elia Kane going to meet Moff Gideon. Just, you know, the opening now and kind of the lower Coruscant city levels. So she has this Imperial probe droid meet her. It scans her face, and it is none other than Giancarlo Esposito's Moff Gideon. And she informs him that they had trouble with the pirates on Navarro. But he's like, right, I'm gonna have to deal with this, and he most certainly does. So one thing I do want to say right off the bat here is that I do think the Spies, which obviously being plural means Elia Kane, but again, it infers that there's more than one spy. I don't want to read into this too deeply. Again, just do be aware that this is all speculation and theory, but there is another character, and I wonder if some of you are maybe feeling or thinking the same things here, but we will revisit that a little bit later. But this is when we have Moff Gideon walking down this hallway, and I do believe that we know this is on Mandalore from what gets revealed, since the Imperials trying to basically rebuild the Empire, basically low-key the First Order in the future. They have been using Mandalore as a base, so I assume this is here. Now, what's really cool is that we see all of these little clone chambers with a certain body inside, and they all seem to be the same attempt at the same body. Now, as we find out in that little kind of warlord meeting, this is Project Necromancer, so you have to think, and do correct me if I'm wrong here, that these are attempts at Snoke. Obviously, into the sequels, Palpatine has his own plans, and he eventually comes to fruition again. We have, you know, Rey's father, and how that was all to do with Palpatine, but clearly, like, Snoke was the kind of first wave, if you will, for all of this cloning stuff to go down. And as you probably guessed, Commandant Hux is most likely General Hux's father. I don't think grandfather, considering, you know, Return of the Jedi to the sequels. Yeah, it's probably father, but either way, I did enjoy that we got a lot more clarity to like all of these Imperials, like the big cheeses out there, really trying to make a big swing at the New Republic, operating in secret, but also just ultimately trying to bring the Empire back. There's a little bit of tensions here amongst approaches, such as the hit-and-run operations in the hyperlanes gaining way too much notice, and if they get perceived as anything other than these, you know, unorganized Imperial warlords just scattered from that of the fallout of the Empire, the New Republic will increase their efforts to take them down. And it is pretty cool to imagine like Luke Skywalker being dispatched to like go after these guys and take them out, but I guess they have been doing a pretty good job at remaining very, very secret. And clearly this all adds into Grand Admiral Thrawn and what they're setting up there with Ahsoka, the whole heir to the Empire thing. And this is where things get entertaining with Gideon, because he says, you always speak with much authority with regards to Captain Pellaeon, yet once again I see that Grand Admiral Thrawn is missing from your delegation, even going as far to say with regards to secrets are his, you know, kind of stock at trade. I hear whispers from one end of the galaxy to the other, and never a word of Thrawn. You have spoken of his imminent return, but you know, how about new leadership? So I do think that even though we're having Gideon propelled up to be this big antagonist, as he kind of always is, but, you know, especially in these last 2 episodes, him speaking this way of Thrawn probably won't end well for him. I do think that we will likely see Thrawn in the next episode. I'm not saying in a gigantic way. It could be something as even small as a post-credit scene or something like that, but I do think all of this doubting surrounding Thrawn could end up, especially with his own ambitions, aspirations, Gideon could, you know, be shooting himself in the foot there. here. He also mentions Mandalorians taking back Mandalore. Obviously, that could definitely halt their plans a little bit, so they all agree to kind of give Gideon what he wants. This involves 3 Praetorian guards, once again, setting up the sequels or the connections to the sequel trilogy there. I know some people aren't like a huge fan of acknowledging that, but ultimately it is the canon, whether you like it or not. And right about now, even though the First Order is a ways away, it looks like Thrawn could be the one who actually genuinely planted the seed for all of that to happen. And all of this gets fleshed out more in the Ahsoka show, and then eventually genuinely leading into the First Order. Then we pick up on Navarro, we have the Mandalorian Fleet arrive, and this is where the 2 factions meet. And obviously there's a lot of tensions amongst the Mandalorians, given that one is the Children of the Watch, they follow the old ways, and then you have Bo-Katan's people, and they're really not so zealoty, if you will, so religious. So naturally, especially with the history of Mandalorians, that gets spoken about quite a bit in this episode, how usually their own conflict is their own demise. That does come out in certain ways. Meanwhile, with Greef Karga, he has a gift for Mando, and it's not just some Coruscant alcohol, it is the IG-11, but IG-12 unit now, fitted more like a robot, actually, as a vehicle that none other than Grogu can pilot. So I actually did really like this. They didn't really do too much with it, but it did add a lot of comedy to the episode. I know some people might kind of see past that and be like, oh, you know, it didn't really do anything. What's going to happen now with that? But for me, you know, I'll take it. It was very, very funny just seeing him spam the no button, try and steal a bunch of food. And clearly he does understand what people are saying, especially with the relevant yes or no response that he chooses to answer with in certain situations in this episode. Now, back with the Mandalorians, this is when Bo-Katan tells everyone that it's time to retake Mandalore. And she mentions that even though the planet isn't cursed, there are still dangers. There's dormant species out there that have been awakened from the bombings. Let's get our shit together and actually do this. Let's unite our people. Let's finally do something that leaves our people no longer scattered, but united. She asks for volunteers from both tribes. We have Din volunteer, and then slowly but surely, one by one, more and more people volunteer, including the armorer. Now, again, I'm going to get into this a bit more later, but did something feel off about the armorer to you guys this episode? And I may be jumping the gun here, but yes, something is off. Now, all she did in this moment was volunteer. There's nothing wrong with that, but I don't know. There's just something. There's just something. Could she be the other spy? The thing is, when I say that, and I've seen a lot of other people say this as well, as you guys know, I like to kind of gather what people are saying about the episode after release on various social media sites. Not impacting my opinion, but I genuinely like to know what people are thinking across the board. And some people are saying as well that maybe we have the armorer being the other spy. And I don't know, because as I said, why would she betray her own people to Moff Gideon? Why would, she ensure the extinction of her race? Because clearly that's what Moff Gideon wants, as he says quite literally at the end of the episode. Finally, the Great Purge will be done, or something like that. Obviously not the line, but you get my point. So why would she ensure that? Because sure, some people might say, she wants Moff Gideon's ways to be the way. Like he's, with the helmet he was wearing at the end, the only other person wearing a helmet like that being the armorer, very kind of Death Watchy. But beyond that, it doesn't really make too much sense. That does seem, the symbolism of both their helmets matching seems a bit more of a misdirect. But even with all that said, and it not really making too much sense right now as to why she would do this, I do kind of feel like something is off, and that there could be another spy beyond the blatant one just being Elia Kane at the beginning of the episode. Now, as the Mandalorians arrive on Mandalore, they spot this kind of ship or barge or whatever it is, and it's none other than some Mandalorians who have been there since the frickin' Purge, and they're actually like, you got any food? And I don't blame them, because, I don't know what they've been living off. Maybe some beasts, or, some of the beasts we saw from previous episodes, but damn, that must be pretty hard. This is where we learn how Moff Gideon got the Darksaber, because Bo-Katan did admit that she surrendered. She mentions how after their forces were annihilated in the Night of 1,000 Tears, and the defeat was very clearly imminent, she met with Moff Gideon, ultimately in exchange for submitting to the Empire and disarming all remaining remaining cities and Mandalorian lives were to be spared, and that is how he came into possession of the Darksaber. And, you know, people were initially a bit like, I don't know, Bo, like, what have you been doing there? But clearly she was just trying to do the right thing at the right time to ensure any and all kind of survival of the Mandalorian people. But in true Moff Gideon fashion, she mentions that he betrayed her, and we were helpless to resist the purge, and they finished it off, and yeah, here we are. We have a little bit of a moment between Din and Bo-Katan after this, and I've seen a lot of people say that Din Djarin seems to be going all out Jon Snow, kind of with Daenerys with this. I do get the comparisons there, but at the same time, I do see what they are writing. Like, Din Djarin clearly isn't the wielder of the lightsaber, nor wanting to be the ruler of Mandalore, so he sees what she is trying to do, and that is to unite their people, retake their homeworld. So I do see, you know, this comfort being relevant, despite some of the Jon Snow meme criticisms here, with him saying, you know, what means more to me is honor, loyalty, and character. These are the reasons why I serve you, Lady Kryze. Your song is not written, but I will serve you until it is. I do see both sides. It's not, I don't think it's like a huge deal. I think what people have more of an issue with is that Din has clearly not only taken a backseat, but like several rows behind in the cinema theater, and Bo-Katan's like right at the front, because obviously they've propelled her character forward a lot more this season. I know a lot of people were suggesting as well that Din Djarin and Bo-Katan are just going to get together and be very romantic, but I don't really, I mean, I'll hold my hands up if I'm wrong, but I just don't think they've put any blatantly obvious things out there for that. Now, I'm not saying that after all is said and done, after episode 8, and after hopefully they land out on top, that they might rule together, like, so she represents one tribe of Mandos and he represents the Children of the Watch, unified together, a lot of people will hopefully follow. But that doesn't necessarily, you know, mean a romance. It means that, you know, he can respect her, actually see what she's doing, and how she could be the one to truly unite people together, and maybe with his help, again, after all is said and done at the end of episode 8, they might be able to lead their people together. But I don't necessarily see blatant, obvious signs of them, you know, wanting to kiss each other's faces off and things like that. Let me know what you think there. I mean, never say never. They've had, like, jokes and, like, smiles amongst each other, but again, that doesn't equate to, oh, man, I love you. I love you. I don't see that quite yet. But anyway, moving on, this is when we have the armorer that say that she's going to take the weakened Mandalorians back up to the fleet so they can get medical attention. And again, I'm kind of like, could you have been the one to signal that maybe she didn't really need to, because we had the Imperials there anyway? Like, there's a whole ass Imperial base, but I don't know. We get a great example of the two tribes just really not liking each other, between that of Paz Viszla and Axe Woves. They have a fight, and we have Grogu. By the way, I love how Paz Viszla was just smacking the crap out of Axe Woves. I mean, sure, he did have a couple of moves. He's more agile than him, but time and time again, it's like, right to the floor. But we had Grogu get in between them, kept spamming the no button. They actually listened to him as well. I guess it's because there's a literal kid right in front of them. But at the same time, it does give me visions of the future and how he could be quite a unifying factor between both tribes for years and years and years and years to come. But that's going to take a while with how long it's going to take him to age. So when we have the Mandalorians from the surface of Mandalore say, we can take you straight to the Forge, we have this kind of ruffle in the distance. Now, initially, I thought this beast was the Mythosaur, because clearly it seemed to, like, come from underneath the surface and then burst up, and I thought, well, that kind of makes sense because it was woken up in the living waters. But at the same time, it actually doesn't seem to be the Mythosaur, because even though this was like a giant Godzilla-esque beast that completely decimated the little ship that they had, and most of them made it out alive, the Mythosaur, even though I think that the eye area is similar, it has like these two kind of giant horns coming out in the way that obviously represents the Mandalorian Mythosaur symbol. Now, this beast, albeit it had little horns on it, it didn't have like the two, you know, massive fang-esque kind of ones there. So this isn't the Mythosaur just yet, even though I do think that the Mythosaur will be quite handy in maybe helping out Din Djarin in the final episode, maybe giving, if not that, an upper hand to the Mandalorians in general, just causing absolute wreaking freaking havoc on on that Imperial base, and Moff Gideon just having to deal with the fact that there's a beast going Godzilla style on what he has built here in secret. Either way, they make their way into the Great Forge, or at least what remains of it, and this is where they hear jetpacks, and these aren't Mandalorians, but they're Imperials. However, they are wearing Beskar armor. Now, I do feel like there was a bit of scaling issues here in terms of Beskar, if you will. I don't think this is remotely nitpicky, I'm not gonna lie, but unfortunately, Star Wars does do this a lot, and it's quite famous for it. You know, one moment Beskar on these Imperial troopers is really invincible, but then at other times, for example, when Paz Viszla might be taking a few out or whatever, they go down in one shot. Other times they soak up blast of fire, and then again, when it's convenient for the writing or the scene, because something might have to happen, they go down again. So stuff like that is a bit frustrating to see, but again, it is kind of what it is. I did find the action really fun, but I did find things like that distracting, all while acknowledging that I know a lot of you are maybe a bit more casual and just really enjoy the kind of spectacle that you get on screen and don't remotely mind things like that. I do get that, but for me, I can't really help but see that it does present some issues, especially if there's certain plot moments that are predicated off the ease of certain troopers dying. Now, in this moment, we do have Axe Woves fly out through the freaking ceiling of the cave or whatever it is. Now, some people are suspecting that he could be a spy. Obviously, at this point, the Imperials have already ambushed them, so I don't know if he is. You could argue that he's kind of just getting out of there for the safety of it. If he is the spy, he could have been relaying with Moff Gideon where they are and whatnot. I definitely think he could be on the table. Please bear in mind, this is all just fun speculation. I just think, ultimately, the larger commentary is that there is something else going on here with another individual. And this is where we get to, the real meat ending of the episode. And so the Mandalorians advance, and they basically run straight into the Imperial base. We have Din Djarin get captured, the blast doors go down, so the other Mandalorians, including Bo-Katan, can't get to him. Din is dealing with multiple grapple hooks, just completely restraining him. Grogu looks absolutely terrified that Din has been captured, and a certain Imperial lands with a jetpack, and it's none other than Moff Gideon wearing a very Death Watch looking helmet. Now, I will admit that I especially with Grogu seeing what his dad, if you will, is facing, a lot of people are mentioning that it would have been handy if Luke's training came into play here, because you would have thought Grogu would at least attempt. I'm not saying that it would have been successful, because this is a blast door, so him using the Force isn't guaranteed to completely wreck that, but I think any kind of lack of attempt here was a bit, convenient to let the scene play out. Obviously, have Din Djarin taken back to the debriefing room, all of that stuff. So there is that. I'm not saying, again, I do want to stress that it would have fixed the situation, but I would have liked to have seen an attempt there. As for the criticisms with regards to Bo-Katan not cutting through the blast door, so with Din there, Moff Gideon there, or even before Moff Gideon arrives, in terms of her cutting a little small hole in the door to get the other Mandalorians to help Din escape, I do think that's kind of risky, because at this point he was being restrained by multiple grapple hooks. So I do want to say this one doesn't go as hard for me, because I do get how she could have cut a hole in that door to try and save him, but they could have been take one step, we're literally going to shoot him and end him right here, right now. It's your choice. You can either keep cutting, or we can just do that. So it would have ended perhaps in a situation like that. They could have easily leveraged Din Djarin. But there is something else to critique here with regards to Paz Viszla. So I do think he went out in a really, really, really cool way. I can't deny that. But the thing is, I do agree with what a lot of other people are saying in terms of how, he's there's too many of them, and he starts fighting them off and allows the other Mandalorians to escape through the hole that obviously Bo-Katan created. But he could have just been like this, right? Smack the button like he did to lower the blast doors and start shooting as the doors came down. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, yes, cool, epic scene death and all of that. I'm not taking that away from this episode, but it was just completely unnecessary. He could have just lowered the blast doors. The Imperials would have been on the other side, and he could have made his escape. I mean, you shut the doors, Paz. You could have shut the door with you on the other side. Yep, I literally just watched it again. Bo's just we're not leaving you behind. There's, all these reinforcements coming from the Imperial side. and he hits the button. The door shuts. He could, yes, the buttons were technically on the outside, but he could have easily made it through there. And he's like, this is the way. Like, so it is one of those tropey, unnecessary moments. I really liked past Viszla. I don't get why. Maybe they wanted to do this just for like, oh no, you know, a character's died. I feel sad now. But I don't know, man. Like, again, you might not be this critical, but watch the scene again and you'll see that there wasn't really a need to do this. But either way, he clears them all out except the Praetorian guards, and they come in and completely gut him. Like, that was pretty savage. So with all being said and done, you know, Paz Viszla did go out as a badass, even if he didn't freaking have to. I haven't really spoken so much about Moff Gideon in this scene because, you know, really he was just flexing, saying, you know, give me the Darksaber. You know, this Beskar Dark Trooper armor looks better with me in it. We're going to take out your fleet. Screw you. Give me back what's mine. You're done for, basically. And I do love a good Giancarlo Esposito monologue or, you know, performance there. He is a badass, but again, with all of this, you know, I'm going to build an army and everything like that, and the kind of arrogance he has with regards to how kind of low-key Thrawn is being at the beginning. As I said earlier, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, maybe he goes out another way. It could be something to do with Din Djarin's escape or the Mythosaur or something like that, but I do think that surely we're going to get some kind of Thrawn tease next episode. He might have something to do with it, or if not, there could be a Thrawn tease where Thrawn says something like, he was just useless anyway, or like his arrogance or overconfidence was his downfall or something. Basically just Thrawn acknowledging that Gideon got too ambitious for his own good if he doesn't have anything to do with his, let's just say, death himself. So clearly, guys, with this episode, it stepped up the momentum. I am still one of those people saying that I do feel like they could have built to this a little bit early on, perhaps, you know, establishing the threat of the Empire a little bit more. I mean, it was seeded early on with Elia Kane and whatnot. Clearly something more going on there. Perhaps it was blooming a teeny bit too slowly with all of the somewhat interlude episodes, all while they were Star Wars fun. I do feel like they could have done just a few more things, but I am happy that things have got to where they are at now. Episode 8 is clearly going to be absolutely crazy. I mean, it's going to have to be, and especially with all of the things that is on everyone's minds right now. Is Din Djarin going to die? I don't think so. I mean, I know there's rumors out there, once again, with regards to Pedro Pascal. I don't really like entertaining those completely unverified sources and stuff like that. I've got a feeling that Din will be, you know, contained and stuff, but again, could get out maybe in the Mythosaur, you know, beast moment. That's if that even happens. I mean, you have to think something's going to come of the Mythosaur, whether that's Bogutan or maybe Grogu riding it in there and just going ham. One thing I do want to acknowledge, though, is that, yeah, they're definitely propelling Bo-Katan to be a lot more front and center, even putting Grogu with her a lot. So, yeah, I'm not saying Din Djarin's going to die, but it does make you think and wonder, like, are they kind of putting her front and center for Din's eventual exit? So not this season, but maybe sometime next season. Very much so speculation, could be completely wrong about that. I genuinely don't even know what to think about it myself, other than acknowledging that Din Djarin has been more of a side character this season compared to that of Bo-Katan. Some people are wondering if Boba Fett is just going to appear out of nowhere as well, because no matter what, when you evaluate next episode, you have to think that the Mandalorians aren't going to be crushed again. Surely they're going to come out on top. This fleet hopefully won't be too compromised, even though it looks that way at the end of this episode. Maybe Boba Fett's going to come in and help propel whatever Moff Gideon's going to do in the space side of things. But yeah, I did enjoy this episode. I don't want to make it seem like I'm spitting in the face of something when we get something that I've been, and a lot of people have been waiting for all season. So what I want to say there is that I have really enjoyed this episode, but it isn't to say that it isn't without its kind of typical Star Wars flaws here. So ultimately, I do want to know what you think. What are your thoughts on this episode? What did you enjoy most? What did you think about some of the theories we chucked in here? You know, whether it's the armorer, the title of the episode, the spies. What do you think is going to happen to Moff Gideon, Din Djarin? How do you think Thrawn could be low-key teased next episode? What do you think about, you know, Bo-Katan, the Mythosaur? There's actually a lot of discussion to be had going into the final episode of The Mandalorian Season 3. If you enjoyed this review, breakdown, and recap, would really appreciate a like. Do consider subscribing for more reviews and breakdowns and news on all kinds of other things on this channel. So I hope to see you on other videos. But other than that, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and may the Force be with you always.